You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. This is Force 13 Live. A little bit of a tough start there because our Facebook stream, which we're simulcasting tonight, took its time to get set up, so I had to really spring into action there in the last few minutes, seconds even, to get that going. But we are simulcasting on YouTube and on Facebook on Force 13 Philippines and on the main YouTube channel. It's just gone 11 a.m. at UTC, which is 7 p.m. in the Philippines, and we're confronted with this massive super typhoon, Surigae, which is now a Category 5. We're giving it winds of 175 miles per hour, an estimated central pressure of 909 millibars. This storm is certainly becoming rather threatening. Signal 2 warnings now in effect for Samar and for Catanduanes. Now, somewhere you'll end up seeing me introducing myself, but I think that webcam stopped working, would you believe? Just when it's the most important time it stopped working, but that's alright. But, you know, the storm's much more interesting to look at. My name is Nathan Four, you can hear my voice, and I'm joined by my team in this hour, consisting of quite a few people actually. Joey, Hypothet, Kenneth, Kin, Noah, Ryan Knack, the Xbox Plays, Xiao Quan, and Zenitsu. Good evening to all of you. So, Kenneth, let's start with you, shall we, because... and they didn't hear you just then because I made that mistake again, but they'll hear you now. Kenneth, you were part of the decision-making process for the storm's current intensity there. What have you made of it in the last few hours?
Yeah, I've tracking this since I wake up at 9 a.m. to track this. At that moment, the western side still has the severe fracture with the CDO. The convection still banking towards the east, but you can see right now, since a rapid convection burst at the southwestern side, since around 4C, which means 12 p.m., it just rapidly warped around, and the structures just exploded. The satellite estimates like ADT reaching a raw T of 8.0 suddenly. Data T Dvorak used 7.5 with cold dark gray embedded in off-white to warm medium gray, which we followed because the eye is around 20 nautical miles wide. Our decision making is to maintain a constraint of a eye pressure dropping. There's a constraint, so we've gradually increased the intensity and called it a Category 5 at 9Z, which means 5 p.m. And right now it is 175 miles per hour with a CKZ derived pressure of 909 millibars.
Let's take a look at some of those warnings just now. This is the latest map from Pagasa. Signal 2 warnings there then for Samar, all of that island, and Catanduanes. Signal 1 warnings remaining in effect for, let's start north there, for eastern Camarines Sur, Albay, Sorsogon, Ticao Island, eastern Masbate, Biliran, Leyte, Camotes Island, Dinagat Islands, and then as you move further south, there is Surigao, north and south, also with Signal 1 in effect at the moment. So, Signal 2 warnings. Kin, you're with us right now, aren't you? You're over there. Could you remind us what Signal 1 and Signal 2 means for those who are in those affected areas? Oh. Okay. Well, that was interesting. That doesn't sound like kin, but fascinating. Signal 2 warnings, generally for the weaker end of tropical storm status, is what I remember. So we could be looking at tropical storm force winds gusting up towards typhoon force. By the looks of things on the track forecast, let's take a look at that right now. This was the latest from the JMA on their new graphics, which are quite hard to read. The JCWC's graphic here showing the storm's expected track, and they have the storm peaking within 12 hours, and then starting a slow weakening trend. Who'd like to talk us through the track there? If anyone.
Okay, I'll do it. So, models, even agencies are splitting towards whether it will move closer or away from Philippines. Yesterday, from Euro models, it says it will make a straight landfall in northern Luzon, although today it just also switched back towards the east, but also a pretty westward track. While in the latest, more recent tracks, because of its very rapid intensification, for more intense storm, it tends to move more northward because of its internal force. For such, Surigae more recently take a more northwestward track, but right now, can you show the microwave imagery right now?
Oh, does anyone have it just now? Because I've not got it here at
In
my
live
end.
output.
Live output.
And output.
Oh,
Live
pardon
output.
me. Okay, let's take a look at this right now. This is an image that Kenneth, I think you sent that in yourself, didn't you? This.
A microwave. Yeah.
Yep. Tell us about it then.
As you can see in the microwave imagery, not long ago, a secondary eye wall formed, out of the inner eye wall with a radius of around 60 miles, 60 nautical miles, I think. This. Because of the hour replacement cycle, you can see in the last hour, its structure just rapidly improved, rapidly warming up. It is because it is a final dash before a weakening trend kicks in due to our replacement cycle, which could temporarily weaken the storm, with the inner eye wall gradually being absorbed by the outer eye wall.
So
But after that, as the hour replacement cycle finished, pretty much under very favorable conditions right now, with 30-degree, near 29-30 degree sea surface temperature, low wind shear, it can just finish it pretty fast.
So
And
Kenneth, are you
Yeah.
saying that it's about to peak here and start weakening?
Yes, it will peak for at most like 1 or 2 hours. It's likely now, pretty much it's neither peak already.
Interesting. Does everyone else think the same on that?
Yeah, I think we probably on this microwave image the secondary eye wall doesn't look extremely robust, but it's probably intensifying right now, and probably 1 to 3 hours, then it peaks, and then now a replacement cycle kicks in, and we see a weakening trend.
But it's going to be a very
From the-
slow weakening trend, isn't it? Was that Ryan? I don't know who that was who was just speaking there.
That
Go
was
ahead.
Noah, yeah.
Noah,
Yeah.
did you want to say something just there?
Yeah, it's probably going to be a rather slow weakening trend, and it could uptick again when the secondary eye wall takes over completely, and with a bigger eye.
And as one of the commenters have just posted there, strongest Western Pacific storm in April as well. I think that's uncontested at this stage, or very nearly.
Wait, did it really surpass Maysac? Or-
Maysac peaked, was it on the 31st of March?
Its
Not
peak
sure right
occurred
now.
at March 31st, if you say UTC, if I remember correctly.
So technicalities, but certainly in the top 3 for April. An extremely
the first-
powerful storm.
Yeah.
It's the first Category 5 since 1997 in the month of April.
And that is rather a long time. So what are we looking at for its eye temperature right now? Because it looks pretty stunning on this satellite imagery.
I
Yeah.
fixed it at least 20 degrees.
20 degrees. Surrounded
Latest fix.
by cloud tops there. The pink areas, that's all minus 80s. That's pretty incredible.
Yes, latest fix is 20.41 degrees Celsius eye temperature.
24.1.
20.41 instead.
20.41. Phew. That would have been quite serious. Still is, of course. But the storm... Well, let's talk about its direction just now as well. Still moving towards the west-northwest, or maybe more towards the northwest. It's pretty assured that the storm's not going to make landfall at this stage, but we could still see storm conditions reaching the eastern islands. That's why Signal 2 warnings are in effect. But what's more, there could be significant flooding issues because we're still expecting, particularly on the island of Samar, that we could see 400 millimeters of rain or higher for some of those areas. If you do have any comments or questions, by the way, you may as well send them in. Start your message with Force13 all in text on our YouTube chat. It will light up big and bright for us. And on Facebook, get your messages in there as well if you're watching on there. I'll be checking that every now and again to make sure that we don't miss anything. But it's pretty... I mean, there was a question, not a question, but a comment there on how it's apparently reached 8.0 on the Dvorak scale. Is that true?
On the advanced Dvorak scale, it did.
ADT?
Yeah.
On the
But-
ADT, yes, it did.
Yeah. Yes. But
On
note that
subjective-
ADT is not the original Dvorak in 1984. In original Dvorak, the maximum only with the eye scene type central feature is at most 7.5 without adding banding feature. Note that.
Okay.
And I don't think the banding features are enough for it to fix it at 8.0.
Only if banding features only added when data T without adding banding feature is smaller than model's expected T number.
Let's take a look at what some of our team are showing us. It's just Joey on the screen share right now. You've got another brand of infrared, a little bit more zoomed out, so it's nice to get that slightly different perspective. Have you noticed anything interesting in the time that you've been watching that, just in the last few minutes?
Not really. I think most of the team have summed up the main points of what the imagery shows. Quite a magnificent storm on the IR imagery that I'm currently looking at, and it will probably remain like that for quite a long time.
It would appear that the highest cloud tops are on the southwestern side.
It's near negative 90 degrees Celsius.
Wow. Now, it's hard. I mean, a storm like this, a 20-degree eye, cloud tops surrounding it of lower than minus 80 degrees Celsius. It would sort of make you feel that 175 is a bit low. Why isn't it perhaps higher?
Mainly, if you see in the satellite imagery, the edge of the eye is still somewhat a bit ragged, and although the satellite appearance improved staggeringly in the last hour, our replacement cycle is kicking in, means that the intensification phase actually isn't that impressive, that steep as what infrared satellite indicates. Also, given that the explosion of the convection occur at around 4C. Given its eye diameter, as I said before, there's a pressure drop constraint of this system, which approximately won't drop more than 25 millibars per 6 hour.
Just getting the newer imageries now. This is the Himawari 8 rapid scan, by the way, and this updates every... I think it updates on 10-minute cycles with 4 images, doesn't it? At every 2.5 minutes. But there's the...
Yes, it is.
Yep, the more later imagery. The eye continues to warm there. Whether it's getting less ragged, as you mentioned, I'm not sure. Its movement quite clear, quite easy to track, west-northwest. And its current distance from land from Samar is, what was it before? I think it was around 254 miles at the top of this hour it was. So that's around, putting that into kilometers, maybe 400 or so. Trying to figure that out on the go. I can't, not really there. But about 400 kilometers or so from land, moving. What's its current movement speed?
11 knots to the west-northwest, I guess.
So around 18 kilometers per hour to the west-northwest at this time. And we are expecting that slowdown and the storm to slowly weaken. You know, is it conceivable that we could be seeing this storm remaining at Category 5 intensity for a couple of days and just moving almost like a Dorian, really?
Probably not, I think.
I know I just mentioned that and people got scolded in the comments for mentioning that yesterday, but they actually might have a point. The storm will remain rather strong as it moves very slowly, arcing its way towards the northwest. Of course, there's no islands underneath it, of course. Let's take some more questions. What will be the major key here that will decide the track of Surigae? Still an uncertain picture, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So indeed, it really depends on the storm's intensity and the intensity of the subtropical high. So things are still changing because we don't know when will the EWRC effect to kick in and start to make the storm weaken, or how strong will the subtropical high be in the next 1 or 2 days. So models have, like Kenneth said earlier, it could have a west curve or a curve east. That's still uncertain. However, models have been trending a bit forward east right now.
They have indeed, and they've been doing that for a little while. They got us going yesterday morning when they were talking about pretty much the storm making landfall. It doesn't look like it's going to make landfall, but that's not reason to let your guard down at all, because we were pretty much expecting that the whole way along, but we've still got a serious situation, and you can see again on the JTWC track forecast. Just to talk you through this a little bit again, the red outlines on the edge of the storm there at the forecast points, that's the gale force wind radius. So you can see it covering parts of Samar and Catanduanes, and a slight movement to the west would put it over more of the islands and possibly towards Luzon as well. You know that the storm could jog, especially when you get towards the 24 to 48 hour period when those when the points really tighten up. And that's where the uncertainty really lies, because, you know, the storm's steering is getting very weak at that stage before it moves off again towards the north. As for intensity and for timings, in 24 hours' time, the JTWC expect the storm to make its closest pass to Samar. Around 36 to 48 hours for Catanduanes, and for Luzon, northern Luzon, we're looking at something around day 3 to 4. So that would bring us round to Tuesday, Wednesday. So this will be here for a while. And by that point, well, JTWC has it weakening quite a bit by that point. But even on day 5, it's still a Category 2. Which is interesting to see. And how far do you think this storm can get? Because it is only April, Further north, conditions really aren't ready for it yet. But realistically, how far do you think it might get as a typhoon?
I think roughly onto the northern end of the cone. So the very northern end of the cone, probably around the latitude of Taiwan, and after that, the entire 26-degree isotherm is no longer there, and the sea surface temperatures are extremely unfavorable.
And then it goes away. All right, so there again is the latest rapid scan satellite imagery, and it's mesmerizing to look at. You can see on the edges towards the left-hand side there some higher clouds reaching the coast near Tacloban and parts of southern parts of Samar. So looks like there may be some increase of rainfall there. I've not got the imagery here with me, but let me try and get it on one of my other monitors, the satellite-derived rain rates, and see if we can make head or tail of that. I must say, in the center of the storm, rain rates are absolutely massive, as you'd expect from those enormous cloud tops. It's off the scale. Southeastern quadrant, well off the scale.
I actually do have some estimates from the NRL for the rain rates, which I'm currently sharing my screen right now.
Okay, let's take a look
This
at
is
this.
a more of integrated images which combines many different satellites together to form just a rough idea of how much rain is currently falling inside. But this is generally it. There are some cases of rain about some 5 to 10 millimeters per hour falling across eastern Samar right now. But generally, the storm is having huge swaths of around 15 to 30 millimeters per hour, up to even above 50 millimeters per hour.
Yep, absolutely. When you consider how the storm might be moving very slowly, its outer bands could be over some of the islands for over 2 days. And that's why we're looking at possibly 400 millimeters of rain. I'm just looking at some of my imagery right now, just getting indications that we've got some sporadic 20 millimeters per hour over Dinagat Island and towards the southern part, very southern tip of Leyte. And over Samar, there's a band just about to reach there that's producing about 40 millimeters per hour, so it's pretty significant, moving over shortly over central Samar by the looks of things, and even more peripheral than that, there's a few sharp showers occurring towards the southern part of Cebu and over northern Mindanao. But if you're just joining us, this is the latest on Typhoon Surigae, a super typhoon at this point. Early in the year, somewhat surprising that we're here, but it can happen, that we're here doing extensive coverage on this one. Usually we expect to be thrown into action in May or June, but they can happen early sometimes. Okay, let's take some more questions. What do we think of the wind speeds of the storm, what they will peak at? Now, we have 175 at the moment, and you guys said it's very near peak. So is that the ceiling, or might it go a bit further?
Might go a bit the like 5 or 10 knots, but I think that's the maximum ceiling.
I agree.
And people pressing us for a percentage chance that the storm make landfall. No, numbers make people feel better, I think, but it's a very low chance that it's going to actually make landfall, but that's not the key point. The center of the storm making landfall, when you look at the size of the wind field, you can say that the tropical storm force wind field will make landfall in about 24 hours. So is that a landfall by people on the ground? They might call it, it's significant enough to cause effects and possibly damage. The pure definition of a landfall, the eye moving over land, isn't the be-all and end-all of cyclone forecasting. But to answer your question, Doesn't look like it will make landfall. And at this moment, still intensifying for the time being. And the eye looks to me like it's continuing to clear out and get a little bit more rounded.
Over the
There's
last 2
almost
frames
no-
on Himawari target area, the eye temperature decreased by a few degrees, but we
Oh.
think that this is just normal changes. Let's see in a second how will it perform. It might change.
Okay, well that's interesting to bear in mind. We are here for the hour, so please send your messages in. Once we're finished, we will be going back to the automated stream, which has been keeping us company during the last 24 hours nearly now, and we'll be feverishly updating that every hour whilst I'm here at the desk, behind the scenes, wherever, as the storm draws closer to land, ticking down those miles. How about the total amount of rainfall for eastern Visayas and Bicol? So, as I've mentioned, Samar around 400 millimeters. I'm just going to get a read on some of those other areas because I had a quick glance earlier, but I forgot really. Catanduanes there, you're looking at something around 300 to 400 millimeters. The bulk of the rain will stay offshore, but those, exposed islands will get much enhanced rainfall. Bicol region, you're looking at 300 millimeters probably, extending as far as Quezon just about. The northern tip of Luzon also, we're maybe looking at about 100 millimeters there. But if this storm if the storm actually did make landfall, which it really shouldn't, and it really doesn't look like it will, but the center area of the storm is going to produce well beyond 500 millimeters of rain underneath its direct track.
We had someone ask what the CDPS rating of this typhoon is. I don't think we have a CDPS, the latest CDPS right now, but
Well, the CDPS only really factors things if the storm's actually going to make landfall. Now, you could infer a CDPS rating for the areas that are going to get impacted by the storm, Samar in particular. I think that will be somewhere around a stage... The rainfall probably makes it a stage 5. Maybe down to 4 now, but still significant. I'm just having a quick look here towards the center of the storm, how much rainfall it's expected to produce. It's really quite phenomenal. In some areas, this is over water, but in some areas there it could be over 1,000 millimeters in the storm's track when it's moving slowly. But that is out to sea. Oh yes, well there's more questions here. Can we see if if there's another invest in the Western Pacific? Because there is, isn't there, everyone? 95W formed earlier on at an extremely low latitude. And I wonder if anyone's got any comments on that.
1 something degrees north. And currently the model's consensus is does not favor the formation of it, first of all. And second of all, it has a very low latitude that unfavors the spinning of a low pressure area due to the very weak Coriolis force due to low latitude.
And any effects on Manila at all? Well, interestingly, the chances of tropical storm force winds there have risen slightly since yesterday. I think it's now up to 8%. Somewhere along those lines, so chances slightly higher, but it still looks like that the Metro Manila area is not going to get much from this storm. Let me just see what the rainfall's expected for that area though. Yeah, fairly low. We're only expecting probably 15 to 20 millimeters of rain for the western coasts of Luzon. Fine margins. And now you can see on the screen, this is the progression of the storm in the last, I think it's about 12 hours. And there's those later frames, in fact, even pushing some -90s in the southwestern quadrant. Kenneth, you mentioned that earlier, but actually I just saw it. I didn't think it actually happened, but there's some -90s there. There it is
And
again,
you
just popping
that-
out.
Yeah.
You can see that part of the northern, the part of the eastern central dense overcast is cooling, especially on the north side. That probably contributed a bit to the cooling of the eye. Some clouds went into it. Maybe it was also because it circularized a bit, and that shed a bit of cloud into the eye, but we probably see the eye temperature bounce back in a few frames later.
True. This is not. Eye temperature is usually not the first thing that drops when an EWRC kicks in. Plus, there are no other signs on infrared showing an EWRC beginning.
If we see an hour replacement cycle, we can see the CDO actually expanding clouds, and then with the ice shrinking and cooling down.
More questions here. Well, actually, there's a question there about how strong we expect it to be, but I think we should ask as well, what is our forecast on it right now? Is it similar to the Joint Typhoon Warning Center? Because I know that a cone came out earlier that went onto the automated stream calling for 180 mile per hour peak, didn't it?
Yeah, and at that moment, we expect an hour replacement cycle a bit later than what happens now. So we went with 180 based on the current trend of the consistent DT of 7.5, which uses at 180 miles per hour. That's why we forecasted at it. But right after the cone was released at 5 p.m., the hour replacement cycle was indicated in microwave imagery.
Now,
But it could re-intensify and expand. No stats.
180 miles an hour is about, is it 280 kilometers per hour roughly?
288.
So nearly 290. That's remarkable speed. And thankfully, the strongest winds, as you can see, those purple areas near the center of the storm there, that's the typhoon force wind field, I believe. So the strongest winds will be in those cores, and as you can see, they stay well out to sea. This storm could have been so much worse, actually. And I think you guys were saying if the storm was weaker, it would have gone further west. Is that the case?
It depends how much it weakened during the hour replacement cycle. Because during the hour replacement cycle, because it's weakening, it could move slightly more westward than it's moving right now.
If the storm didn't strengthen to this intensity in the first place, it would have gone further west.
Yeah, and the threat to Philippines will be way larger. Currently, what I forecast is Surigae will be closest to the Philippine landmass. The closest point will be at around 150 kilometers. This is what I'm expecting. 150 to 200, somewhere like that.
Fascinating to look at that eye right now. What you see there on the bottom left is that little flicker of yellow, which is around -92-degree cloud tops on this imagery. And then some cloud enters the eye. Now, and the eye I might be speculating, getting a slight bit ragged there. Could this be the beginning? Not sure what you guys make of that latest imagery.
Usually not, because like Kenneth said earlier, EWRC cycle and weakening usually start with the CDOs starting to appear like gaps or other spirals appearing out of it instead of actually the eye dropping. But while the convection is still dropping, bursting very hard, I doubt if this is any sign of a weakening.
It's remarkable to look at. More questions. Well, someone said hi to us. Hello. Nice to see you on our stream. Of course, this is a major situation, so we've got to do what we've got to do with this. If a tropical cyclone takes a direct hit but doesn't necessarily make landfall, would we still release a CDPS? That's a question I think that's under debate at the moment. I think Devon's intention for the CDPS scale was to only use it for actual landfalls. We'd have to get him on to talk about it to explain any more than that without putting words into his mouth. Why isn't there recon in the Western Pacific? That's another question that gets debated time and again. We could do with it, couldn't we? It would be really nice to have recon planes in these storms to tell us just how strong this actually is. So, to reiterate, this is Typhoon Surigae, a super typhoon at this point. We've put it at 175 miles per hour, sustained, with higher gusts and an estimated central pressure at 909 millibars, trending downwards. Still could have a chance of dropping below 900 millibars in the next 48 hours. So looking at again at that JTWC forecast track, you can see the storm is expected to make its closest approach to Samar around 24 hours from now and slow down when it does so. Starting to turn that corner, moving towards the north-northwest, then passing Catanduanes, closest approach 36 to 48 hours, and then moving off towards the north. This forecast could still change. Indeed, and tropical storm force conditions could still occur anywhere inside that large cone and possibly slightly beyond that cone, because Manila, even though it's on the very edge of that cone there, does have an 8% chance of tropical storm conditions. But it's pretty much assured at this point that those areas under Signal 2 warnings, and let me remind you of those warnings again, there they are. Signal 2 in yellow, that's for Samar, Eastern Samar and Northern Samar, and Catanduanes. Those will probably all get tropical storm conditions. The blue zones will get near gale conditions at least, and that extends from Camarines Sur through eastern Masbate, Leyte, and then down into Surigao. So again, we have another 20 minutes to run here, so if you do have any questions for us on our live hour, please go right ahead. We'll be live again tonight, our time, morning in the Philippines, 7 a.m. tomorrow. So we will have coverage, full coverage on that. And I'm just looking to see in the comments section on our Facebook just now. I don't think there's any addressed to us, but actually there is there. Can it still make landfall? Pegasa said the track is uncertain. Any chance at all? I think the silence says everything.
The likeliness is rather low, I'll say, given the current general west-northwest, northwestward track and gradually turning north. The likeliness is pretty low, but very, very close path there's still a chance that it may pass within 100 kilometers from the main
Really, that's quite
land.
close.
Yes, yeah. Which might see a little bit hurricane force winds.
Yeah, it would, yes.
Lower, like Category 1 sustained winds. We may still see that.
So what storm do you think could we compare this to as an analog right now? Because I like to think I'm quite decent with my West Pacific history, but I can't think about things at this time of year. The only thing I can really think of is Newell in 2015 that made landfall on Luzon as a Category 5 in early May.
I don't know why, but I sort of think of Mankut at this point.
There was someone on the Facebook chat that mentioned Mankut and its track. I can see why. And then it flung itself northwest and then into Luzon.
I mean, both Norn and Mankut did landfall on Luzon.
Just in terms of structure, it somewhat looks a bit like Mankut, but for track, I'll say a bit like Neither of 2004.
Yeah, so I was thinking about those ones. What time of year did that one occur?
Neither is 2004 when it passed through similar northwestward track in 2004, also peaked as a Category 5.
What part of the year, though? Was that around July, August? I can't remember now.
May. Mid-May.
Yeah, so that is a decent analog then for track. Let's see if we have... someone said Wu Tip there as well. Not sure about that one.
When it was intensifying, the structure was quite similar to Laura when it first was intensifying, but now certainly not.
And again, this is from the Himawari 8 satellite. We're currently looking at one of the infrared channels, the enhanced infrared. And just to remind you of the colours there, the pinks are minus 80 degree cloud tops. The yellow flicker that you just saw, that's minus 90 degrees plus. And that is a sign of extremely powerful cloud tops and the storm itself, of course. We're thinking about that. To be honest, I mean, the cloud tops in that are on par with Goni, aren't they?
They're
even higher.
Yeah, they're even higher. I mean, by cooler, if you mean by higher, I would say.
Yeah, cooler. I mean, yeah, the cloud tops are higher up in the troposphere.
All right, so do we have any model input right now on what they're saying at the moment? Any changes in recent runs? I don't know if anyone wants to bring any of those up just whilst we have a chance. But in the meantime, whilst we see if we get some of that, we've also got more questions. Whether it will reach 190 miles per hour, you think that's too much?
Yes, that's too much. Probably not.
To be honest, to evaluate the intensity of Surigae right now, I really wanted to wait for this S-map pass around 1.5 hours earlier, and the exact data haven't come through yet, so we can't read the wind speed that SMAP got earlier today. But that would be a really fascinating one to see, and would really help us to see the intensity of Surigae.
You just saw a wide view for a moment there from Joey, showing the storm more zoomed out. Oh, let me just get that again. It's a nice view, visible going into the nighttime infrared there. Just shows you how powerful the storm is looking and its influence, which is extending now across most of the Philippines. The very peripheral clouds reaching central northern Luzon now, but you won't feel anything in those. The main bulk of the storm is still well offshore and should remain mostly offshore. And then you've got that band, which could be producing in some areas locally 40 millimeters per hour for a short time for parts of Samar or Leyte in the next coming hours. So just a reminder of what the latest warnings are again in the Philippines. This was from Pagasa at their last update, which would be, I think that would be 5 p.m. Signal 2 warnings there for Samar, Eastern Samar, Northern Samar and Catanduanes. Signal 1 warnings for Camarines Sur, Albay, Sorsogon, Ticao Island, Masbate, Biliran, Leyte, Camotes Island, Southern Leyte, Dinagat Islands and Surigae north and south. And soon the storm will start to pull clear of Mindanao, and those signal 1 warnings will start to relinquish. But for the time being, that's still in effect. And do we think that the signal 2s will get upgraded anytime soon? I don't know, looking at the satellite imagery, if it keeps that northwestward movement, it does look like it will miss Samar by quite a bit. But I'm not sure people's thoughts on that. Let's see how some more questions here just now. How strong can this be? We've been talking about that quite a lot this hour. We've sort of rounded on maybe it'll get 5 or 10 miles per hour stronger. Will it have a chance to see... will there be a chance of storm surge over Samar, Bicol and Catanduanes? What are we thinking about storm surge?
That's relatively
Probably not gonna
unlikely.
be
The storm is not traveling any closer to the PA to Samar for right now. But plus, I think that even the recur will happen much later, and so it shouldn't be affecting Samar with storm surge, but only some gale force wind instead.
Yep. Is the storm growing in size? That's something that I've not been looking at very closely. Wind field, has that increased?
It did a bit, but the CDO expanded a lot. However, CDO size isn't the most representative value for the site of the storm.
You look at the JTWC radius, and they're expecting it to be fairly similar, maybe slight decrease in size.
But surely the gale force wind size overall, the wind radius size will probably expand after an hour replacement cycle.
Oh, naturally, yes. Why aren't they forecasting that then? Something to ponder there. And now we're looking at Hypothets imagery there as well. Another look at that storm looking very powerful. More questions as well. Why do you think it can't reach 190 miles per hour? Because the cloud tops are very, very cold and very well structured, says Laurie.
There's an IWO replacement cycle about to happen, and the CDO is a bit weighted on the eastern side, so it's not entirely symmetric. The eye temperature is okay. That will probably won't be fixed as 8.0 or anywhere where we would get a intensity estimate of 190 miles per hour out of that.
Yeah, the eye temperature is too cold and a bit unstable still. So right now, no.
Certainly fairly unstable. This is the thing with IWO replacement cycles, you just don't know when it's going to happen. There was one question that came in there about whether it will fail to recurve at all, whether there's any chance of that.
Extremely unlikely.
So that's pretty much a no.
Yeah, the natural steering winds to the north of the subtropical high will guide it eastwards.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at right now. This is the storm with the latest imagery. Let's just get a few distance calculators right now. So it's currently at around 11.9 north, 129.5 degrees east. And that would put the storm around 260 miles from Guyuan in southernmost Samar, 310 miles from Tacloban City, 275 from Barongan City in Samar, further north towards Legazpi, 393. Manila still 602 miles from the storm. Cebu 397, they've got a very low chance of receiving anything much like Manila, really. So just a few pointers there in terms of the storm's distance, and it is currently at the same latitude as central Samar and southernmost Masbate Island, just to give you a reference point. We've still got a few more minutes for questions as we get closer towards the 8 p.m. hour. Will it affect Taiwan? That might be an interesting question to answer. Can't completely rule that out. Just take a look towards the northern periphery of the JTWC cone, and there you can see just how large that cone gets as we get towards day 5. But climatology and our, all of our indicators at the moment would suggest that the recurve will be complete.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is extremely unlikely for the storm to bring any impacts to that area, Taiwan more specifically.
So that's a full look at the cone there, and as JWC predict there on day 5, still a category 2 when it reaches that northern area on line with the nearly towards the Batanes Islands, and for it to remain a category 4 for a good, what's that? Well, this is bearing in mind, this was from their last forecast, which has only 130 knots, which is 150 miles per hour. That's 25 lower than what we're going with. So bearing that in mind, the numbers will all be higher across the board there. You'll probably see it being a category 4 until the 20th, the evening of the 20th, Tuesday. So this won't be going away for a while, and we'll probably be doing live events every day, twice a day at 7 a.m. and p.m. Philippine time, with our automated stream, of course, in the background, which we'll be going back to in a few minutes' time. You can also have a chat with all of our members on our Discord server, discord.gg/force13 for Tropical Weather Chat. There's loads of chatter about the Western Pacific going on in there at the moment. It's been hard to keep up with, actually, but certainly a lively discussion going on there at all times.
Oh, great. Okay, we have some breaking image of the SMAP image mentioned, and the value has released. And
which one
shows,
is this? Hold on.
Yeah, and this map image indicated a 10-minute sustained wind. Note that SMAP uses 10-minute sustained winds of 148.35 knots.
We're just
We
trying
are
to get this on the
quickly
screen.
analyzing the data. And yeah.
So there's what we've received here. The last image, right, is what we're showing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so what does it tell us on the face of it?
That would show us, it shows 10-minute wind of 148 knots, and using the standard conversion to 10-minute wind, that would indicate a intensity of 185 miles per hour.
Oh my!
Wow, that is pretty intense.
That
and
is.
At the most
that's another reason.
ratio, you can tell 180 to 185, and this image you can see, the path, the center is pretty much at the center of the wave. That means a perfect path, and the error should be not large, really not large. And we're quickly need to make a call based on that, because it is near the end of the stream at 12.
So they're going to be very busy doing that. Kenneth is part of our analysis team. You're going to be really busy trying to crunch those numbers.
And spoiler, only I'm online. Okay,
That-
so
That's another reason why people need to be taking this typhoon seriously here. If you're in those signal 2 warnings, you need to be taking your preparations as soon as you possibly can here. This is nearing Category 5 intensity officially, but of course by our estimates is a Category 5 right now, and deservingly so. This is just a continually intensifying storm. So again, anybody in a signal 2 warning is going to be taking this typhoon seriously here. Please be taking your preparations. This is not a typhoon to mess around with whatsoever. Again, this is a still intensifying storm here, and as you saw with that SMAP rating of at least indicative of 148 knot wind, which is pretty intense. So please take this seriously. If you know anybody in the path of this, please let them know and make them aware of this so they're not kind of caught off guard by it. I know the track is still really uncertain, but it's better to be safe than sorry and be well prepared instead of being super unprepared and the storm ends up going a lot closer than forecast. So please keep that in mind, and please keep preparing ahead of time from this super typhoon.
My best indication right now is that the storm will probably pass about 200 kilometers off Samar. For Catanduanes, probably about the same.
200 kilometers, you think?
Yeah, it's looking that way.
Hmm.
Best indications at the moment, that of course can change for better or worse.
I just hope it takes the furthest east path here, but it's just, I think it's just too uncertain to call, I think, for now. I think regardless, there's a very good chance that Catanduanes, I can't say the island, right? I'm sorry for my butcheration
You got it.
of the pronunciation. They still need to be, they're probably gonna get tropical storm force winds regardless if it, if it heads more east or if it heads pretty much due course of what we're thinking right now, if I'm not correct, right? Or if I'm correct.
I'm really trying to figure out just how much rainfall is currently being produced in the storm right now. It's on the southeastern quadrant, ridiculous rain rates indicated from satellite must be over 65 millimeters per hour.
Wow.
It's rather monstrous right now, let's just say.
Yeah, this thing, when I went to bed, it looked like it was on the verges of intensification. I thought maybe it might get to 150 miles an hour, 130 knots when I wake up, but now we're looking at a potentially much stronger storm than we initially thought. Just is really, really concerning. And I can't say it enough. I know I sound like a broken record right now, but I really hope people are taking it seriously here. This is not a storm to mess around with at all here. Just looking at even the newest data coming in. So just please take this typhoon seriously.
Question on Facebook about Pangasinan, will it be affected? Western coast of Luzon should be clear of this storm and probably won't get much rain. You're probably looking at maximums of 100 millimeters, and that would be inland.
Yeah, if we put the storm with the SMAP pass, that supports an intensity of 160 knots. That's 185 miles per hour. That correlates to pressure of 897 millibars.
Good
Wow.
God.
yeah.
I just realized that this is an April storm we're talking about here. This isn't a November. This isn't a October storm that you would probably usually see a storm of this magnitude in. This is an April storm, so it's just.
I mean, we
Yeah.
can have Category 5s in any month of the year in the Western Pacific, but it is still a surprise to see. It is rare to have it in April.
Oh, I can't remember
Yeah,
the
it
last
is.
time we had one. I think
Okay.
Maysack was the 31st, if I'm not mistaken, of March. But
1997,
I don't know
we
if
were
it went
told
to
earlier.
1997. Wow.
I mean, it'd be more like, I mean, I guess the big point there is that we're not in an El Nino, and an El Nino would really favor this kind of activity more.
But you also have to note that the Westpac waters are extremely above average. So that might contribute to some more activity.
Yeah. Kenneth, go ahead.
Okay. I think, based on the estimate of the FORAC T 7.5, and this map has, and with one more analyst agreement, announced that we are going with 180 miles per hour.
180.
180 miles per hour at a pressure of 903 millibars.
So that's going to be our official line at the top of the next hour. You'll have to bear with
I
me
think
as...
that's safe. That's safe enough for an upgrade of 180. Could be 185, but safely 180. Using the Harper wind conversion of 1.05, the most safe ratio that we use instead of what SMAP usually used for 1.075.
Okay, well, there you have it. Typhoon Surigae now 180 miles per hour by our estimates. We've got to go here. We'll be back again at 7 a.m. Philippine time. We're handing it back over to the automated stream on the live link on YouTube. You can check out our social platforms and join our Discord server for tropical weather chat. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Take care, everyone.
Stay safe.